Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be covering a few little different topics. But first off, take a look at this. CTV was advertising that Carney was doing a live event, and it shows him here in Scarborough on a stage talking to individuals. Yet right around here, all of a sudden it just cuts out and it goes to a podium where CPAC actually is covering this, and they have no coverage of him at this live event or on that stage, and they only have him showing up here. But the way it got cut off at CTV was like this.
Markets don't have values, people do. And it's our job, and this is what the Liberal Party...
Yet it says live now. And there's a live chat happening too. So what's really going on here? What's going on with the media? I'm a little confused by this trickery that's happening here. Now, he is currently live on CPAC. I can admit that. You can hear him.
In the end, this is as much about making that government spending.
He's answering some questions, but very strange how the media is playing around right here. Another announcement is from the Freedom Convoy. Pat King. Apparently he was announced that he got house arrest for 3 months. A judge found him guilty. But he originally was supposed to have a sentence, or they were trying to sentence him for 10 years for mischief at the Freedom Convoy. He's now got it reduced to 3 months in house arrest and 12 months of probation.
Pat King, one of the organizers of the 2022 Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa, has been sentenced in an Ottawa court today. King has been sentenced to 3 months of house arrest and 12 months probation following that. The Crown had been seeking 10 years, the maximum sentence, after Superior Court Justice Charles Hacklin found King guilty on 5 counts in November, including mischief and disobeying a court order. King was found not guilty on 3 counts of intimidation and 1 count of obstructing police.
And before we get to the major topic at hand, I just wanted to quickly cover this little story. We have another Liberal MP who's deciding not to run. Daryl Sampson, this gentleman here, Sackville or Preston, he put out a statement. I'm not going to read it. I'll just kind of go down if you want to take a quick look. He did highlight right here, I've decided not to seek re-election as a member of parliament for Sackville Preston. He has 2 pages here. He has 6 incredible grandchildren. Again, you can read this if you want. I'll leave it up here for a bit. But the main story that I want to talk about today is Trudeau announcing a high-speed train system. And it's very strange that he's making this announcement when we actually don't have a sitting government to sign off on any sort of contracts, to sign off on these kind of deals. And the CBC actually kind of brings this up. And they talk about who this contract is sort of related to. And take a listen to this.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has just announced plans for a new high-speed rail line. This project is called Alto. The trains will connect Quebec City and Toronto with stops in Trois-Rivières, Laval, Montreal, Ottawa, and Peterborough. They will reach speeds of 300 kilometers an hour.
And we've known since October that the Trudeau government did intend to proceed with a high-speed rail a plan as opposed to high-frequency rail, which was something they considered, trains that would just run more often at a slightly lower speed on a different route than the via train system that we have in Canada at this moment. They are going all the way with the high-speed option. They are doing this in the form of a public-private partnership, a PPP. We learned today that they have not signed the contract for this yet, but apparently coming, depending on who was talking, within days or within weeks weeks here. The timing on that politically is kind of interesting, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the winning bidder, and there was a process here where three major groups kind of shortlisted for this. They had to, by the end of the summer or midsummer, I believe, submit different options. The government has now gone with the Cadence proposal. That is the group that was working with a partner affiliated with high-speed rail in France, also the company that sort of the previous SNC-Lavalin also.
Now, if you quickly heard what she said there, it was SNC-Lavalin. And funny enough, 5 hours ago on CPAC, we actually had this video come out. A group calls for private prosecution of Prime Minister Trudeau for the role in the SNC-Lavalin affair. As I mentioned, this guy, he's part of a Democracy Watch. I was going to do kind of a video on this, but he talks really, really slow. Maybe if I speed him up a little bit, I'll incorporate some of it. But essentially, because of their request for access files from the RCMP, they uncovered quite a bit of how the RCMP didn't really do much. They only interviewed like 4 people. They didn't really pursue anything. It took over a year and a half or a year and 9 months, I think he said, for actual decisions to come through. It is a good watch. I'm just warning you, it is a little bit slow. He does answer some questions from the media. So as I said, I might cover this in another video, but very interesting that there's now this SNC-Lavalin tie yet again to Trudeau, this new plan, and so on and so forth. But it's not just this Cadence company that's on par with this contract. Air Canada apparently has also put themselves involved with this contract, which even the reporters were saying seems kind of odd because that would be taking revenue essentially away from Air Canada, since Air Canada does domestic flights between Montreal and Toronto.
Interesting about this bid, this consortium that was picked has involvement with Air Canada, which raised some eyebrows, given that if we eventually do have an efficient high-speed rail system in this country, that would presumably eat Air Canada's lunch in terms of its short-haul flights.
Now, the interesting thing is that Trudeau and Anita Anand are the ones doing this announcement, which are 2 individuals who won't be part of the next election. And this actually was a question posed by one of the reporters saying, how can you guarantee that this contract is going to basically survive if, say, a new government comes into play? Wouldn't they just cancel it if the Conservatives didn't want it? Trudeau kind of stumbles over his answer, but he essentially says that this project was meant to be established over multiple different governments. And Anita Anand reiterates saying, like, in the next few weeks, this contract will be signed.
In the contract with the consortium, will there be any guarantees to make sure that if there's a successor, you will have a successor, if there's a next government, let's say the Conservatives, won't be able, or it won't be easy for them to stop the project?
Listen, this high-speed rail in this country was always going to be a project that would be take long enough to build that it would cover multiple governments at all different orders of government, from municipal to provincial to federal. And it takes a will and a determination by a government to move forward and lock in this progress. That's exactly what we're doing now, with contracts signed to build this project in a way that will be there for Canadians. Obviously, future governments will make their determinations about how they invest, but this investment in Canadians, which starts right now, is going to be very difficult to turn back on. But I'll maybe no. You good on this one?
Just one thing. Yeah. So the contract with Cadence we expect to be signed in the coming weeks, and the remainder of the time of the 5 years that we've been mentioning for co-development will include items like placement of tracks, placement of stations, getting the permits, ensuring that we do the consultations. So that is work that is going to be concluded on the contract side within the coming weeks, and the plan of execution will be there, as well as the funding for this government and future governments to invest in. And in fact, how could they not invest in the potential to add $35 billion per year to the economy once this project is complete. So it's pretty clear that this is a policy option that should be universally accepted regardless of the government in place at the time.
Now, with this announcement, they also mentioned that this is a three-phased project, and they are entering phase one, which is going to cost $3.9 billion. But essentially, they're going to take like 4 to 5 years just to establish the contract, where things are going to be laid out before anything actually gets initiated. And then at that point, it could cost hundreds of billions of dollars.
And there will be 3 phases to the project. And the first one will cost $3.9 billion. Trudeau calls it, quote, a nation-building project.
The timelines for this are very important. What we heard was that this next phase, this development phase, is going to be for the next 4 to 5 years or so. So for people eager to kind of ride a train like this in the near future, that will not be happening. 4 or 5 years of development puts us into the 2030s, and then you start building the thing. Some 1,000 kilometers of what they say will be an electrified train track, but one that they believe will be beneficial to Canada's economy, improve productivity, and of course address long-standing issues with rail and transportation infrastructure generally in this country. Here is the Transport Minister, Anita Anand.
The Toronto to Quebec City corridor is a cornerstone of Canada's economic development. Nearly half of our nation's population lives here, and the existing transportation network has not kept pace with our historic population and economic growth. We expect to lay approximately 1,000 kilometers of dedicated track, allowing much faster travel times.
So would the Conservatives want to be implementing this new project? Would this also be their vision? We know that in the past, at a policy convention, Conservatives have voted in favor of the idea of high-speed rail. Would they be on board for something that ultimately could cost $80 to $100 billion, though? That is a lot of cuts to pay for something like that. And yet, if this contract is signed before Trudeau and Anand are out the door, it is something that could cost a future government money to get out of.
Now, I wish I could say that I was surprised by the amount that this is going to cost and the time frame it's going to take, but here in Ontario alone, they implemented an LRT, or are still working on it. It was announced back in 2019, and they said it was only going to cost around 11 billion, and be done by 2027. Well, it is now up to $27 billion and won't be done till 2031. If you want, you can go to Wikipedia. They gave a little bit more information on it. But as of August 2024, the estimated cost for the 10 miles of track basically has been the 27 billion, which is estimated to be completed by 2031. Now, I believe Anita Anand announced this being 1,000 miles of track. So I guess the cost sort of correlates with that. However, it's very interesting that he's announcing this now during this Liberal leadership race, Liberal campaign, where they need to bolster more support, especially in Toronto, in Montreal, in Quebec. And that's where this main rail line is going to be focused. Now, the reason I say it's very important for them is because if they control basically a lot more of those ridings, if a lot of those ridings shift from the Conservatives like they are currently, as you can see here, Toronto and Ottawa, pretty blue. There are some pockets here, the deeper Toronto area that is very Liberal. Kingston, Liberal, some of Ottawa, Quebec, all that kind of stuff, Montreal here. But if this stuff starts to switch more to red, they might just win. Because if we look at the Elections Canada map, it's kind of hard to see because it is small. But basically in Quebec, there is 78 ridings. And in Ontario, there's 122 ridings. So if you just combined Ontario and Quebec's ridings alone, that's 200 out of the 338 that is possible. So even if you have all of these other provinces blue, as we do now, Western Canada is basically obsolete when it comes to a lot of this situation. If this little pocket here starts to switch, then we're in deep trouble, because now that means they have the majority of the votes. Right here is 200 ridings. The rest here is the rest of the 138, basically, and obviously Atlantic Canada and stuff like that. So out of and I actually think it's now a little bit less. I think it's 334 potentially with the new mapping of some of the ridings. But regardless, this is not good if they start trying to win people over with this kind of announcement, or basically buttering them up. But I think our interprovincial trade might be of more importance currently. So maybe getting a pipeline versus a like a rail system, might be the proper thing to do. With that being said, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about this whole announcement, all the shenanigans that are seemingly happening here? The thing with Carney, was it live? Was it not live? I don't know. A lot of weird stuff is happening right now. But as always, let me know in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.